What's up, Ronan? Probably gonna jump on some Overwatch, but maybe I'll play something random too. I don't know. Don't really have anything too crazy planned. I want to do some VR soon. Wait, what's happening to chat? Why can't I see anything over here? Okay. Alright, I think I can read everything again. What's up, Dantor? Like Destiny 2 Beyond Light. I actually need to update that. It hasn't been updated in a while. What's up, Tax? Popped in to say hi. Not really interested in Overwatch. Okay. Love me some Overwatch. Also, D&D win. I hate Blower Blotch. You see the new hero? I saw them, but I haven't seen them actually in action yet. I am gonna eat though, so we're gonna watch some Overwatch lore real quick while I do that. Something weird with my the YouTube on my TV or on my Xbox, I should say, is it keeps signing me out, so I just got lazy and never signed back in. So you'll see I'm not actually signed in. But yeah, so if there's anything weird that pops up underneath recommended, just know that this isn't actually me signed into my account, okay? But yeah, I'm gonna eat, then we'll jump onto the game, and yeah, we'll hang out for a little bit. Been playing Destiny. I regret it. We're on our knees begging. Dark Souls lore. So I wouldn't mind watching Dark Souls lore, but we watched all of Dark Souls 1 lore, which was like 2 hours and some change. And I want to wait till we beat Dark Souls 2 before we watch the second one, which I think has an even longer video if I remember right. Let me start this.
At MedStar Health, we're doing everything we can to prepare for what if. Like, what if you think you're out of options? Patients continue to turn to us after losing
New raid is so lame. Okay, buddy, new raid is good.
It's how we treat
Kitty can't watch stream today. Family issues. Okay. I hope she's doing all right. Never got to check up on her hip and knee stuff. It's a walking sim, not VOTD good, but it's still good. All encounters are too easy. Only cool encounter is the planets encounter. Goodbye. All right, Tax, have a good one.
Do you know the backstory of
1 and 2 are
Overwatch,
boring.
the organization, and
Easy
how
encounter 3
all
and
the
4
vast array of
interesting and
characters
easy.
that you play in the game fit into its world and existence? Well, if not, I've got you covered. Here is the story of Overwatch, the complete lore history, explained.
I kind of wanted to watch all the cinematic stuff, but I'll settle for this for now because I just want something to watch while I eat.
Short Recall as the basis of our timeline. In this first animated short of Overwatch's history, Winston, a former member of Overwatch, returns to its abandoned headquarters and activates a recall for all known previous agents of Overwatch. That is to say, he wants them all to return to action and restart the organization. But why did it shut down in the first place? Well, this is where our story begins. Around 30 years before Recall, a company by the name of Omnica Corporation begins manufacturing Omnics. These were automated machines designed to revolutionize the workforce of the world, providing a cheap and constantly self-improving workforce. Their factories were called Omniums, and Omniums were installed in countries all around the world. But before long, the Omniums began to malfunction, and an investigation of Omnica Corporation showed that they were lying about their expected growth and output, leading to Omnica being dissolved and the Omniums being shut down. Giant machine building corporation went bad? Who would have thought? But for reasons unknown to humanity at the time, the Omniums suddenly started to reactivate and they immediately declared war on humanity. They built massive machines of war and began attacking cities all over the world, all without giving any demands or reason as to their aggression. This would become known as the Omnic Crisis and is one of the most significant events in the history of the Overwatch world. However, we learn later in Overwatch's lore what caused this rise from the Omnics. It all came from an Omnic called Aurora. Aurora was a curious and inquisitive Omnic who traveled the world in search of spiritual and physical enlightenment. Eventually, in Nepal, she would find it and become the first Omnic to gain sentience. That is to say, she had the capacity to feel emotion and think independently. Exactly what happens next is unclear, even to the Omnics themselves, but she took a huge risk. She sacrificed her own life and transcended life itself in order to pass her sentience over to all the Omnics of the world. It is said that she was engulfed in a great golden light and expanded, reaching what the Omnics now call the Iris. The Iris is sort of a spiritual place of enlightenment, and in time, the Omnics would come to build statues and temples dedicated to Aurora. And here they give thanks to her sacrifice and try to achieve the same level of enlightenment that she reached and become one with the Iris through meditation. So, back to the Omnic Crisis, nations around the world were unanimously losing to the Omnics. The very adaptability that made Omnics useful tools of labor made them tactically impossible enemies to defeat. Not a single country around the world was able to shut down even a single Omnium. So the humans were in big trouble. But there were standout individuals who, through their skills and ingenuity, were able to achieve smaller victories, and the United Nations secretly gathered them to form one unified task force. This task force was Overwatch. Jack Morrison, aka Soldier 76, Gabriel Reyes, Reaper, Anna Amari, Mina Liao, Reinhard Wilhelm, and Torbjorn Lindholm. These were the 6 founding members of the organization. In highly secretive missions, they targeted key Omnic strongholds, shutting down their command operations and scattering the Omnic forces, rendering their military inert. One such mission was Operation White Dome, where Torbjorn was gravely injured and rescued valiantly by Reinhardt. In return, Torbjorn allowed Reinhardt to name his daughter for him and also made him her godfather. Eventually, he picked the name Brigitte Lindholm. So after much struggle, sacrifice,
I feel like I vaguely knew
these
that.
concerted missions, the Overwatch team brought the Omnic Crisis to an end. The world rejoiced, and Overwatch was lauded as the savior of humanity and a paragon of good and heroism. The organization grew and began to recruit more operatives and even expanded the scope of their missions. With global stability as their objective, Overwatch began to tackle terrorism, dictators, rogue Omnic forces, and even natural disasters. With their scientific expertise, they were even able to eradicate epidemics, reverse ecological damage, and develop breakthroughs in medical care. These glory days would continue on for about another 2 decades. So let's take a look at what was happening to other characters around the world in the meantime. Around 20 years before Recall, in South Korea, an Omnic faction by the name of Guishin began to operate on its own accord. They emerged from an Omnium in the East China Sea, initially in the form of a giant Omnic colossus that would attack South Korea every few months. In response, the South Korean government created a mechanized armor drone unit called Mecha. The Mecha were able to fight back the Colossus for several years, with every fight ending in a stalemate. Mecha would defeat Guishin, but not destroy them, sending them back to the ocean to bide their time. But eventually, the Colossus and the Guishin were able to adapt, as Omnics were known to do, and were able to interfere with the Mecha's control networks, meaning they couldn't operate on their own anymore. In desperation, the South Korean government would go on to respond by searching for skilled pilots to operate the machines, who became known as the Mecha Squad. In time, they would call upon Hana Song, a world champion esports player known to us as Diva. Back in America, around 20 years before Recall, Elizabeth Caledonia Ash is disowned by her parents shortly before her 18th birthday, leading to her masterminding a string of heists against her family's company in revenge. She is soon joined by a man named Cole Cassidy and forms the Deadlock
Like
Rebels,
he's kind of running
aka
through
the Deadlock
these
Gang.
backstories pretty
Together, they become a notorious crime organization in the American Southwest. Before long though, they are busted via a sting operation by Overwatch, and Cassidy is captured and given the choice of rotting in jail or joining them. He opts to join them as part of a new secret sub-organization they were forming called Blackwatch. Blackwatch will be very key to Overwatch's story, but more on that later. At the same time in Australia, things were a lot less rosy. Still around 20 years before Recall, the Australian government tried to make peace with the Omnics. They gave a large section of land and the country's Omnium back to the Omnics, hoping that they could encourage a happy coexistence between humans and Omnics. But the land they gave them came at a cost, and a large number of humans were displaced, and furious at this treatment, they formed a group known as the Australian Liberation Front. One of its members was Mako Rutledge, known to us now as Roadhog. They began to retaliate against the Omnics and eventually sabotage their Omnium, accidentally resulting in an explosion that not only destroyed the facility, but irradiated the entire Australian outback, turning
I'm
it
just
into
realizing
the
I never knew
apocalyptic
anything about
wasteland that it is
Roadhog or
today.
Junkrat's like
On the ruins
backstory.
of that Omnium, though, the survivors formed a home, Junkertown, named after the scrap bits of metal and junk that were used to assemble it. And
Like I kind of knew about like people like
would call
Reinhardt,
themselves
Soldier
Junkers.
76,
The two
and
initial leaders
Reaper.
of Junkertown were Mason
I know
Howell
none about
and
them.
a man known only as Stone. Stone and Howell were war buddies and good friends. However, when it came time for Junkertown to pick a leader, Howell took sole control of the city and banished Stone to the wasteland along with his wife and children. The Wasteland is a troubled and lawless region outside of Junkertown, where the survivors, who call themselves the Wastelanders, are forced to fight not just the harsh environment, but also feral Omnics who hold a grudge against humans. Stone perished in the Wasteland and was buried there alongside some of his children, who also sadly didn't make it. For 13 years, Mason Howell rules Junkertown as its Junker King, participating in several reckonings in the process. The reckonings are a free-for-all arena fight.
You don't have to love nature to visit Tennessee. You also don't have to love whiskey.
Where several participants fight the current ruler of Junkertown for control of the throne. In his 13 years of rule, Mason Howell never lost a single reckoning, though it's likely he played some underhanded tricks in order to achieve this feat. Eventually, he is challenged by a wastelander named Odessa Stone, the very daughter of the man he banished to death. Odessa participates in the reckoning, being the first wastelander to ever do so, and against the odds, she manages to win. With her victory, she is crowned Junker Queen and remains in charge of Junkertown to this day, where she rules with an iron fist and some sick power chords. Back
What?
to our timeline though, around 12 years before the recall short, the rest of the world is still feeling the presence of Overwatch, which is still largely seen as a force for good. Over in Japan, the Shimada clan reached a critical juncture in their history. While they were criminals, the Shimada clan had ruled Kanezaka in Japan and the neighboring area for centuries, because their illegal activities, that being arms dealing and assassinations, came in combination with the deep respect for the people they were ruling. They firmly believed in honor and loyalty, and thus the people of Kanezaka felt safe and happy with the Shimadas in charge. One notable example that demonstrates this relationship is told to us by Kiriko, a young girl who was grown up in Kanezaka and under the wing of the Shimadas, because her mother was the one teaching the Shimada children how to fight. She tells us that every year, Kanezaka holds an end of summer festival where each night its residents leave their homes to watch a grand display of fireworks. A long time ago, a rival clan tried to use this as an opportunity to end the Shimada's rule in Kanezaka. With everyone distracted with the fireworks, this rival clan set fire to homes, shrines, and areas of importance to the Shimada, such as the fields that generated them money. They knew that with everyone distracted, the fires would rage unchecked, and they hoped that the Shimadas would immediately have sent some wagons to extinguish the flames in the fields and orchards where their financial interests lie. They figured the Shimada wouldn't bother with helping the people of Kanezaka, who would be deemed as a replaceable workforce. So members of this rival clan hid in the fields, waiting to ambush the Shimada when they came. But instead, the Shimada arrived in Kanezaka with water, food, and medicinal supplies to tend to the people. It was only after making sure that the people were alright did the Shimada head to their fields, and the townspeople came with them. When they arrived, they easily outnumbered and defeated their rival clan. However, this didn't stop other clans from trying to usurp the Shimadas, and eventually, around 12 years before the recall short, the Shimada leader Sojiro is assassinated, and it comes time for his son Hanzo to take control of the Shimada clan and the Hanamura castle. As soon as Hanzo becomes the clan's head, its elders demand that he do something about his younger brother Genji, whose easygoing and wayward attitude angered them. Eventually, Hanzo confronts his brother Genji and asks him to take a more involved role in the running of the clan. Unhappy with this idea, Genji refuses, and enrages Hanzo with his response. The tension between the two brothers eventually built to a violent confrontation, leading to Hanzo killing Genji, or so he thought. This tragedy.
That's such a weird reason for them to have fought. I'm used to like they were brothers, and the brother who wanted to control everything challenges the other for like control the whatever. But Hanzo was mad that Genji didn't want to step up, so he fought him. That was really weird. I mean, new, I guess, but it's
breaks
weird.
Hanzo's heart and he chooses to abandon his clan, which prompts the remaining members of the Shimada clan to mark him as a target for assassination. In reality though, Genji does survive, and he was saved by Overwatch and in particular Dr. Angela Ziegler, aka Mercy. Genji's body was rebuilt via cybernetics, and seeing his potential, he was transformed by Overwatch into a living weapon to turn against the Shimada clan and their illegal activities. Genji then single-mindedly sets about the task of dismantling his family's criminal empire and eventually succeeds. This era represents the beginning of a new generation of Overwatch, as new operatives join the organization. On Horizon Lunar Colony, a research base on the moon, scientists were experimenting with genetically enhancing animals, particularly gorillas. One such animal was a monkey who displayed such rapid brain development that Dr. Harold Winston, a scientist on the colony, taught him science and inspired him with tales of human greatness. Eventually though, the other gorillas formed an uprising and killed the scientists on Horizon Lunar Colony. Not wanting to be a part of that, this gorilla took on the name of his mentor Winston and uses an escape pod to make his way to Earth, where he will eventually join Overwatch, an organization that represented everything he admired about humankind. However, in his escape, he leaves behind one of his dear friends, Hammond, a genetically enhanced hamster with remarkable mechanical ability. Like Winston, Hammond escaped the Horizon Lunar Colony when the guerrilla revolt began, but unlike Winston, his pod broke off and landed in a different location,
gave me a good chuckle.
the wasteland of the Australian outback. Here, he becomes a mech fighter, and eventually the champion of the Scrapyard, a gladiatorial-style arena combat that was used in Junkertown as a form of entertainment. Here, he would don the name of Wrecking Ball, in reference to the giant mech ball he had created. Another of the new recruits goes by the name of Lena Oxton, hired by Overwatch to test an experimental new plane that was capable of manipulating time. Unfortunately, the plane malfunctioned, and as a consequence, Tracer was affected by something known as chronal disassociation, which meant that she was slipping in and out of our present time. Winston, though, invented a device known as the chronal accelerator, which allowed her to stay anchored in the present time.
It was like one of the reasons that Overwatch is so popular.
That she was then able to use in combat, such as the ability to slow up or
specifically
speed her own time at will.
The videos made about her
is a significant figure by the
and
name
probably
of
her feet.
That's
like one of the reasons why Overwatch has stayed so popular.
Moira was a doctor with dubious morals who believed in scientific advancement at all costs. Though she was previously condemned by Overwatch for some of her questionable actions, she is brought into the now growing secret Blackwatch operation run by Gabriel Reyes, aka Reaper. At this point, they've begun conducting more and more audacious operations, eventually culminating in the all-important Operation Retribution. What is Operation Retribution? Well, we're now around 8 years before the recall short, and Overwatch's facilities in Oslo are attacked by a group called Talon. Talon began as a mercenary group during the Omnic Crisis.
I'm pretty sure I still have it downloaded. I just need to update it.
And began to influence world governments and global operations. This
I have so many games.
Triggers
I didn't realize I had that many games.
Where Overwatch sent a strike team to Rialto.
They're not all downloaded, but at one point or another, I think I owned them or had them downloaded.
Genji and Cassidy. Together,
I actually have a game that I wanted to play for a long time. I saw somebody play it on TikTok,
even when he's confronted by the team,
and it looked mad interesting. And I was like kind of browsing through the library today, and I have it. I don't remember ever downloading it, but
in a fit of rage, though,
I have it.
Kills Antonio.
This is a game called Subliminal.
A highly dangerous situation where the strike team is barely able to make a risky exit. However, the cost of Reyes' reckless actions is that the public now learn about the operations of Blackwatch. This truly represents the beginning of the downfall of Overwatch, as the public now sees a new side to the organization that was previously only thought to be doing good. This side, Blackwatch, was willing to do underhanded and illegal things, included cold-blooded murder. Trust now begins to erode in the organization of Overwatch, and it inspires many people to rise up against them,
which means I can play Demon Souls and Bloodborne. Nice.
Once more, I am really sorry to the people whose names I'm butchering. Who takes
do Last Wish and we'll teach you how to do it. That'd be so fun.
Becomes a high-ranking
is that Destiny 2 stuff?
After Operation Retribution, things start going wrong much more frequently for Overwatch as well. They're forced to shut down their base in Cairo, leading to the massive destabilization of the region. One of their leaders, Gerard Lacroix, is killed, and not just by any assassin, but rather his wife, Amelie, who was brainwashed by Talon and turned into a sleeper agent. As a result of killing her husband, she will be given the moniker of Widowmaker. All these events lead to the world's nations trusting Overwatch a lot less. And at that very
Widowmaker's
time,
original
an organization known as Null Sector
design
emerges
was
in
kind
the
of
United
creepy.
Kingdom
Her eyes weren't
in
supposed to look so
response the
human. They're
harsh
supposed to look
treatment that
like
they received from the government there. In the United Kingdom at the time, Omnics
like
were denied
artificial.
basic rights and legal freedoms, and many felt as though they were being treated like criminals or under military occupation, and they were routinely victims of police brutality and general mistreatment by law enforcement. Null Sector was formed as a response to all of this, and they eventually began to wreak havoc in the streets of London. But even as Overwatch offered to intervene, the British government forbade them. Flagrantly ignoring that decision, Jack Morrison sends a strike team down to help, and although Overwatch manages to save the day, it comes at the cost of an escalating distrust from the world at large. People around the world now start to question if Overwatch is not just some rogue organization that acts with its own will and for its own interests, rather than a force for public good. There are a few
they got the
wins
Justice
in this period,
League
though,
treatment.
and a few successful operations that see Overwatch claiming big wins. One such example is a fight in Singapore, where Winston, Tracer, and Genji are able to combine to bring down Doomfist. Doomfist, it turns out, was a key orchestrator in Null Sector's uprising, and putting him away served as a huge blow to Talon. But that joy doesn't last long. Tensions were rising within the Overwatch organization itself.
Breakout night watching sports at Dave & Buster's. How's it feel?
I just never imagined I'd be here watching on a 40-foot
Unskippable
screen,
ads.
and to do it with my old man in the crowd, it's special.
Teaching him DSC would probably go much better. I played DSC enough to know like the tip of what? We could even do Vogue or Prophecy. Suffer as I have. Why am I getting an ad? I'm getting an ad, okay? We're all getting ads right now.
And Cole Cassidy decides to leave rather than
No
be
ad
forced to
subscription,
pick a
my
side
ads.
in the growing civil war. Genji, having successfully dismantled the Shimada crime organization,
Ads
finds
always
himself
find a way
unable to
in.
live with what he had become, a weapon and not a person. He too leaves Overwatch, deciding to search the world for inner peace. All of this culminates in a huge fight between the two primary figures of Overwatch, Jack Morrison and Gabriel Reyes. The details of their battle are unknown, but we do know that it was devastating, causing an explosion in the Swiss headquarters of Overwatch that destroys the entire base and has the world assuming that both men are dead. In reality, they both survive. Reyes was saved by Moira, who found him near death and injected him with an experimental chemical that makes his cells simultaneously decay and regenerate at a hyper-accelerated rate. In effect, this means that he can be human flesh 1 minute and then black
She
mist
pimped his
next,
ride.
alternating between these states of
Against his
matter.
will, though.
In this new form, he took on the name of Reaper and continues down the dark path he had already started. How Jack Morrison survives is unclear, but we do know that he would re-emerge years later as an independent vigilante under the name of Soldier 76. With these two men presumed dead,
Hey, there's my
command of
girl.
Overwatch is given to Vivian Chase, codenamed Sojourn, a Canadian cybernetics expert who had been coordinating many of Overwatch's missions
She's so
already.
bad.
The world is shocked by the news of the violence of Overwatch's leaders.
I wonder how
and the
much of her is
self-destructive fight they
cybernetic,
had.
you know what I'm saying?
It triggers an inquiry by the United Nations, and that inquiry finds out all about the shady operations that Overwatch, and Blackwatch in particular, had been conducting. Left with no choice, the world decides to outlaw Overwatch in what would be
I'm
called
like Reaper,
the
except
Petrus
I'm literally
Act.
nothing like him at
All
all.
activities from the organization were henceforth made illegal, and Overwatch is officially disbanded. That then brings us to the Recall short. It's been 5 years since the Petrus Act that disbanded Overwatch, and its various members were made to scatter around the world. All of them by this point have either moved on with their lives or are forced to operate in secret for fear of being punished. The influence of both Talon and Null Sector have continued to grow around the world, even as heroes like Winston and Tracer continue to operate on their own accord to protect the world. It is basically around this time period in which most of the Overwatch animated shorts take place. Let's quickly run through these shorts and what they tell us about the Overwatch story during this time period. In the Alive short, Widowmaker is planning to assassinate Takarta Mondata, a significant figure amongst the Omnic community with a growing following around the world,
Elizabeth?
who
Oh,
wants to
shit,
see
what did I
humans
drop?
and Omnics live together peacefully.
Elizabeth Bray,
Mondata is part of the
Ada
Shambali
One
Order of
over
Monks,
Soldier
who
One?
hope to spread a positive and empathetic message.
I don't know who that is,
around
but I'm
the
gonna
world.
assume that it's
At
racist.
this point, Widowmaker, who
That's
you
a
will
racist
remember was
statement.
brainwashed into becoming a Talon
knew it.
member, is working alongside Reaper and Moira, both formerly of Overwatch, but now bad guys. Despite Tracer's best attempts to stop Widowmaker though, Mondata is assassinated, and this is a huge blow to world peace. We know that Doomfist of Talon was key in orchestrating the original Null Sector uprising, and so killing an advocate for interspecies peace like Mondata is very likely to cause more anger amongst the Omnic community and escalate the situation, especially since this takes place in King's Row, London, where the Null Sector uprising originally took place and where Omnics still feel mistreated by the local government. The next short we see is Dragons, in which Hanzo infiltrates his former home of Shimada Castle to pay respects to his dead brother Genji. Only, while he's doing this, he's interrupted by a man who he thinks is an assassin sent to kill him. In truth, it is none other than his brother, Genji, alive and now in his new android form. The two fight, and Genji defeats Hanzo, revealing his identity to his brother, a revelation that shocks Hanzo. Last we saw of Genji, he had quit Overwatch and was traveling
Elizabeth was black before she was a robot, so there's no way it can be racist. Oh, the old I have a black robot friend thing. Okay, I see. Trying to tokenize your black robot. I see.
Genji tells Hanzo that he has forgiven him,
Very
and that he wants
typical.
him to move on with his life and contribute to a positive impact in the world. Next is the short Hero, which shows us that Jack Morrison is still alive, fighting as a vigilante in locations around the world to combat injustice. He's now
that little
referred
girl,
to as
Farah?
Soldier 76, and though he doesn't wish to
Farah,
rejoin
Farah.
Overwatch, he still hopes the world can find peace once more. In Infiltration, we learn of Sombra, one of the world's most skilled hackers who
Sombra
seems
bad
to be a
too.
part of Talon and helps them attempt to break into Volskaya Industries, a factory where the Russian government are building giant mechs to combat any future Omnic uprisings. Talon's plan is to kill Katya Volskaya, their leader.
That's where, like, the
presumably in a
baddest girls in
further attempt
Overwatch
to
are, like-
hamper human-Omnic relations.
It's like
It turns out
Zarya,
that Sombra is working to a goal of
Junker
her own
Queen,
and sabotages the
Sojourn,
mission, instead using it as an opportunity to blackmail Katya for herself.
Sombra,
She sees having such a powerful friend as a
May.
potential asset for the future. In Honor and Glory, we see that Reinhardt
Oh,
is now
Brigitte too.
retired to his home of Eichenwald, where he's weighing up Winston's recall and whether he wants to join Overwatch
or
again.
Brigitte,
Here,
however you
with
say her name. I always say it
his
wrong.
mechanic and goddaughter, he reminisces about his younger days as a foolhardy
Okay,
crusader
buddy.
whose
Speaking of
reckless
racism, watch
actions
Remember the
cost the life
Titans
of his
today.
then master, Bolderich von Adler. Remembering the
good movie.
promise he made to protect others as a crusader, Reinhardt decides that he will return and help Overwatch. In Shooting Star, we see a typical attack on South Korea from the Guishin we spoke of before. As they come for Busan, we see Diva single-handedly drive them back while looking so beautiful.
Okay.
In Rise and Shine, we meet May, an ecological scientist who had been working for Overwatch many years ago to combat unexpected climate phenomenon which had been increasingly
Orisa and
occurring
Echo.
around the world. However, when a particularly bad polar storm battered her base in Antarctica, she and the other scientists decide to put themselves in cryostasis while they wait for a rescue team to arrive. Upon waking up, May learns that several years have passed since that time. In a tragic reveal, she realizes that the other scientists' pods had malfunctioned and that she is now the sole survivor. As she catches up on world history and learns of Overwatch's downfall, she
survivor.
determines herself to help wherever and however
night
she
I
can.
can't sleep.
The final short
We
to
living
mention
in
is The
hell.
Last Bastion. Though this short actually takes place many years in the past, around 15 years before Recall. It shows an abandoned Bastion unit, one of the many Omnic types that was used for combat during the Omnic Crisis. Traumatized by its past, it threatens to return to its primary mission of waging war against humans. But when it's comforted by a little
You see that
bird
skin
named
he has?
Ganymede, it opts instead for a life
That's
of
one of the,
peace and retreats back into the forest.
skins you
Many
get for
years
buying,
later,
like,
this
Overwatch
Bastion unit
Origins.
would meet with Torbjorn in Sweden,
Which is pretty
where
much
an
like
initially
the
skeptical Torb
copy
learns
that
to
everyone
trust
got when they
Bastion,
bought
and they
Overwatch.
join together as an unlikely duo.
And I used to think how
Outside of
dumb it
all
was
this,
that these were like
though,
legendary
it's clear that the
skins that
conflict is
pretty much everyone
escalating around
had.
the world, and
That made them not
nefarious
very
forces are building
legendary.
strength,
But
demanding
now
a
in
response
Overwatch
from the
2,
heroes of the world. Doomfist, for
these skins
example,
are
managed
kind
to escape
of-
from prison and
kind
returns
of
to
rare.
being a high-ranking leader in the Talon organization.
That's the shit
Together
that I
with an
like.
Omnic known as
I like the
Maximilian,
rare stuff.
They begin to plot a plan to manipulate the world to their will. This
That's kinda
brings
why,
us to
like,
the most recent lore events
in
leading
World of
right up to
Warcraft,
the
when they
launch
make
of
something that
Overwatch
was
2.
rare,
In many ways, Overwatch 2 is an appropriate
more
name
accessible
from a
now,
lore
I get why
perspective
people are
because
upset.
it represents a new version of Overwatch.
It's like bragging
with a
rights
new
having
guard
something
of
that you can't get
characters.
anymore.
The main player in this is Cole Cassidy. Cassidy receives a call from his former captain Ana Amari to meet him in Cairo. He, like all the other former Overwatch agents, has received
Seriously trying to
a
bring up
recall
skin
from
when
Winston
we're talking
and
about
is
robots.
considering whether he wants to return or
Classic
not.
lives.
In his time away, he's simply been acting on his own, still largely doing good deeds.
If
such
this was
as
a
saving
TikTok
precious
debate, that
piece
would have
of
been
Overwatch
taken
cargo from being hijacked
very
and sold to the
serious.
highest bidder by his former deadlocked
They would have went on a
rebels,
long rant before
led
you could ever
solely
get the
now
opportunity to
by
explain that it was a
Ash.
joke.
This cargo is in fact Echo, An Omnic AI
And then once you
designed
explain it's a
by and
joke,
modeled
they would've
after
just doubled
Dr.
down
Mina Liao, one
and
of the
stayed
original
mad somehow.
members of the Overwatch crew. So reuniting with Ana, Cassidy encourages
Relax! Car doesn't drive itself.
Hey, we can actually skip this one.
her to return and become the new leader of Overwatch. But Ana declines,
That sounds like
saying
some
it is time for a new
rich
generation
person
to take the helm.
project.
A new
You
generation
aren't rich,
she
are you?
wants Cassidy to lead. She gives him the information of new heroes around the world who she thinks will
Very
be willing
rich.
to help, and reluctantly accepting that mission.
That's why there's a
Cassidy travels
forever
around the
donation
world
goal for
looking to
computer
recruit
that I'll
new
probably
exceptional
never get.
individuals to the resurgent Overwatch mission. He finds first Ana's daughter, Farah, and she agrees to join him, followed by Baptiste, a former Talon agent who turned coat, and Zarya, a Russian war hero. In the meantime though, what we have is probably the most single important moment in recent world history.
I thought somebody rank all the Overwatch, all the Overwatch girls,
Paris,
and they ranked like Zarya and Junker Queen so low. I was like, I was like, off the first two, you were tripping.
Joined Winston and Tracer as part of their ragtag Overwatch recreation, and they head over to defend the city. But when a giant null sector robot appears, it seems that they may well be outmatched. That's when timely interventions from Genji,
Saw a clip of
Brigitte,
LTG going, well, your mom,
and
I had to go
Mercy
come back
saved the day,
there.
and
I'm gonna just
Overwatch
ban him
officially
for
returned for the first
8,000.
time since it was outlawed those many years ago. Also, it cements Genji's place as the coolest character in this game because, come on man, how freaking badass
How long
is
has
this?
that dono
How can
go
you not
been
be
there,
mega hyped
and
when
what
he
is it
comes
at
up?
right now?
The world ponders
It's
the
been there
implications of
for-
all this, particularly
It's
about
been there
null
for a good
sector,
minute.
who seem to be escalating their
It's at
operations around the
170
world.
now,
What are their
but
plans?
technically
Who will be their next target? It is at this
20
point
of that
Busan in South Korea is attacked,
was
not by
specifically
Gucci,
for me to
but by
buy
null
a
sector. And once more, the Mecha Squad
the
are
power
scrambled
cable
to
for my
intervene.
Xbox when
In
it
a
got
tough
chewed
battle
through.
against overwhelming numbers, they fear they might be losing.
So it says
When
170,
onto the
but
scene
it's
arrived
technically like
Cassidy and his
150, but
recently
it's like
recruited
20
squad.
bucks. If we ever reach the
Together with
donation
Mecha
goal, it's
Squad,
not gonna be
they
that
beat
big of
back the
a
null sector forces and save
big
the
of a
city.
deal.
As a result of this, Diva is given permission to join Overwatch, and she, alongside Cassidy, Farah,
Do a stream
Baptiste,
where you
and
make a
Zarya,
bunch of different
head
tier
over to
lists.
the
Yeah, I
Overwatch
really want
base in
to.
Gibraltar, where Winston initiated
I did
his
one stream
recall
where I was gonna
launch.
make a tier
They
list
go
for all
with a
the
new sense of
FNAF
hope and
animatronics,
optimism, hoping to restart Overwatch once more. This time,
and I
the
started
right
it.
way.
But the problem
And
was
that
it was gonna be
is
so
it.
long.
For now, this is where the story will continue
And
now in Overwatch 2. and
there was like maybe like
particularly
one or
during
two
the
people
PvE
in the stream.
content. How will Overwatch
If
be
that.
received by the public? Will they welcome them back or see them
And I was
as a
like, I don't know if I
dangerous
want to sit
outlaw
here
group?
for like.
What is null sector plan?
I mean, I could have made it a
Do they want
YouTube
to
video, I
assert
guess.
Omnic supremacy and eradicate organic life, or do they simply
But
perceive
spend
that
like
they have not been given
an
equal
hour
ground on that instead?
stream
And what of Talon? What
that
are their
nobody was
plans
there
on all
for.
this?